They do indeed go to 19 on turn 5, but now I'm thinking I might have a chance to turn this around. Hey everyone, I have some gameplay today as a follow-up to my Ruby Sapphire control guide. Lately I've been playing mostly in print, and that's where I've been getting a lot of my testing done. But I know some of you are wanting to see different matchups for the Pawpsicle Control deck, especially against strong decks. So yesterday I recorded several games in a row without any cuts or edits, so you can follow along. I'll speed through these games and commentate my thoughts over them so we can get through a lot in a short time. I think this might be a great format to show off decks in action, but you guys let me know what you think about a video done this way. And keep in mind, there's a mix of both off-meta games and strong matchups. I kinda gotta take what I can get on the latter, but if you do wanna see more, I can totally play more. Before we get into the games though, real quick, I have 2 exciting announcements. First up, I'm doing another giveaway. This time I want to give away something that could help new players, or competitive deck builders, or even collectors. So I'll be giving away 2 Rise of the Floodborn starter decks, as well as a spread of Sapphire staples. I felt it was appropriate for this video. And finally, this graded slab of Hades Infernal Schemer. So all of this will be going to 1 lucky winner. To enter, just like this video, make sure you're subscribed, and comment down below and let me know what your #1 Disney character that you want added to Lorcana is. For me, it's either Jack Sparrow or Yzma, Cat Yzma to be exact. Now for the second announcement, this video has a wonderful sponsor that makes content and giveaways like this happen, Cards and Castles 2. This is a digital card game that takes in-depth deck construction and combines it with an exciting battlefield where units you play can move, attack, and defend. With 7 distinct factions, including the new Undead faction, the game is full of interesting strategies from a Spellslinger type build to a unit swarm deck. There's a lot of wacky possibilities and depth to each card archetype, and I particularly enjoyed deck building. I think I built around a dozen decks the other day. My favorite so far is a deck that swarms the board with small units and then powers them up one by one. There's also a huge set update with dozens of cards that just released this week. Cards and Castles 2 is free to play on Steam, iOS, and Android, so go download and check it out. I'll have a link below in the description. And as you do, make sure to enter my promo gift card for 5 free packs. Just use code Steadfast to pick them up. Go check out Cards and Castles 2 and show them some love for supporting the channel and the Lorcana community. And with that, let's get into some gameplay. I'll be playing Pawpsicle Control, essentially the same deck as the one in my guide. The only difference is I'm testing out a couple copies of One Jump Ahead. Let's jump in. Alright, let's walk through some games. In this first one, I started off with a kind of bad hand, so I threw cards back looking for my typical Pawpsicle opener pieces. I did find Pawpsicle and actually drew Hiram right away, so my hand is looking really good. I also have Nick and Fishbone Quill, so I'm feeling pretty nice. With their Queen opener, I was thinking this was a Steel Song matchup, but then they play out Snow White, so it's clearly something different. It turns out to be an Amber Sapphire mid-range deck, but at this point I'm not really sure if this is a Princess heavy list, or a healing deck, or maybe they just have the Floodborn Snow White. I'm not too afraid of the matchup. I just continue with a standard opening with Fishbone ramping up and Hiram drawing cards. I could have used Fishbone Quill to ink that Poison Apple instead of that dragon, but I decided to save it in case they do shift out that big Snow White or play Rapunzel or something. They end up dropping their entire hand to play out Surfer Stitch, which isn't too bad for them, but I go ahead and take it out with Hades and continue drawing cards. At this point, I'm pretty happy with my card advantage, but they do start playing out items and drawing cards themselves, as well as their own Hades. I'm not too afraid of what they have going on, so I'd rather continue drawing and building up a huge advantage with strong cards in my hand. They play out a Hiram of their own and decide to quest instead of taking out my Hiram, which is good by me. After this turn, I'm very far ahead in cards, so I decide to just wipe the board and lean into that advantage. They have been able to creep up to 13 lore, but now with the firepower in my hand, I should be able to finish out the game. The one thing I do need to look out for is the possibility of them having Tamatoa. They do have 4 items out, but even with that in mind, I have a few different ways to deal with them, so I'm not too worried. Now I just need to finish out the game by clearing everything they throw out and ramping up in case I do need to play out more than one piece of removal on the same turn. On to the next game. I have a Pawpsicle in my hand, so I throw back a lot of other cards to try to find Hiram. I do end up finding him, as well as a strong turn 2 with Noi. And my Pawpsicle does draw me Nick Wild, so again, I found a pretty great opening sequence. Honestly, I found this deck to be pretty consistent in terms of its opening and mulligan. I haven't really had a hard time finding good openings like this. And honestly, it's one of my favorite things about this deck. So we're up against another Amber deck here, and they inked a Ruby LeFou, so it's an Amber Ruby deck. Again, not a top meta deck, but still a fun one to practice against. The opening turns here for me are pretty standard, although they do have the Bodyguard Simba, plus the evasive Minnie Mouse, so I do need to do something about their board pretty soon. My plan here is to ramp fast with Quill so I can drop that Be Prepared if I have to. My goal of ramping up is working pretty well. I'm already at 6 ink, so I could drop that Be Prepared down next turn if I need to, and I even draw my second Be Prepared here, which is great. Now they play a Queen of Hearts out, which I wasn't expecting, but I guess I should have thought of, and they use it to draw 3 cards after attacking into Hiram 3 times with everyone else, which is pretty awesome. So the draw power in Amber Ruby with Rapunzel plus Queen of Hearts is quite good and fun to see as a big fan of Amber Ruby. But I do decide to take out that Queen of Hearts before they draw more cards off her, and I continue my typical ramp and item things. I don't feel pressured enough to drop Be Prepared just yet. They have some quest threats on board, but they're only at 2 lore so far. And of course, they actually play out another Queen of Hearts as a response, and they end up drawing even more cards off her, which is crazy. So I am starting to feel the pressure now since they have like 11 cards in their hand. Luckily, I do have Hades on board who can sing Be Prepared instead of me having to spend the ink on it. And you'll see here just how much tempo I can get off that move as I reset the board and start to establish control back again. I even took out a few bonus creatures of theirs because they played them out right before the wipe. After Hades sings Be Prepared, I even have enough ink to play out a Hiram plus a Gaston. So even though they have a ton of cards in hand, I have a really good board presence right now and I'm up in lore, so things actually feel pretty good after that reset. Right here they play out Scar, which is much preferred over a Be Prepared. And at this point, I'm wondering if they even have Be Prepared in their deck. The lack of it so far, even with their huge hand, makes me suspect they don't run it. Knowing this, I can continue to stack up my board presence and push towards the win by questing. They are able to take out one of my two characters here with Lady Tremaine, but I decided to just go ahead and wipe their board again and play out Hiram and see if they have an answer. If they do, I still have the ability to play out a double Tremaine next turn if needed, but they aren't able to find an answer, and I take this one. In this game, I decide to throw back everything other than my 1 and 2 drops, hoping to find Pawpsicles. And I do find 2 of them, as well as Hiram and Grandma Tala, so I'm liking that. All of those options mean I have some flexibility with my opening here. However, they do hit the ground running with a classic Lilo Simba aggro opener. So I have to figure out how I can deal with this, and I don't have many options in my hand to do so. I decide to play Grandma out for now. My best chance is to draw Teeth and Ambitions or get out an early Maui, but they actually use just in time to get Goofy out plus 0 to hero for Doc all on turn 3. A crazy opening that leaves their hand empty, but they have 7 lore on board with 4 already gained, so this one's heating up very fast. Now I do draw Be Prepared here, which gives me hope. I just need to survive a few more turns. And here they play out the Queen and quest away. The only good news is that their hand is empty and they only have 3 ink in the inkwell. But if they do manage to draw the Shift Queen, I'm done for next turn. I could use Let It Go to prevent that from happening, but I decided to hold out in order to burn everything on the next turn with Be Prepared. And even without the big Queen, they're guaranteed to go to 19 next turn on turn 5. So I make sure to hit in with Grandma Tala, getting me to my precious 7 ink on the next turn. They do indeed go to 19 on turn 5, but now I'm thinking I might have a chance to turn this around. They did not find that Floodborn Queen they needed, so after drawing with Hiram, I slammed the Be Prepared. It's 1 to 19 lore, and the only good news is that they have an empty hand, and I have a healthy one. They're actually unable to play anything next turn, so I jump to 9 ink, ready to use Maleficent Dragon. And as long as I can keep drawing and answering them each turn with removal, I should be able to pull this off. I decided to keep the teeth and ambitions there instead of inking it with quill, because I know I'll need all the removal I have to make this work. And now I have 10 ink, and so I have a lot of wiggle room to both remove things and play out characters like Gaston, who can find more removal, plus quest for 3 each turn. I definitely need to make sure I'm not just removing, I also have to be questing if I want to pull this off. This game is certainly an extreme example of just how much this deck can oppress and control the board after getting to 7 ink. It's quite powerful. Even here I take an unorthodox approach and double cast the teeth and ambitions to take out many. I do this so I can save the let it go and be prepared for the future, but after that they concede because I'll be at 20 lore within the next 2 turns all of a sudden, and they just can't deal with that pressure raining down. It's pretty crazy I was able to hold them off that definitively after they got to 19 on turn 5, but that just shows the power of having the Triforce of card draw, ink ramp, and hard removal. Certainly one of the most memorable games for me while playing this deck, and even though it was against an off-meta deck, the way I played it out could be done against other aggro decks with a similar result. On to this next game. I got everything except for Pawpsicles, even after throwing a few things back, but I do find one right away with my turn 1 Develop Your Brain. They ink Ariel and play Cinderella, so it looks like I'm finally against Steel Song here. I ink one of my Hyrems because I have another one and I'd rather keep that Fishbone Quill to start inking things in my hand starting next turn. I used the quill to ink one jump ahead. I could have used it on the Poisoned Apple, but the Apple is actually really good into this matchup, and I'm about 99% certain they will play out Ariel on turn 3 since they previously inked one, usually a good indicator that they had 2 in their opening hand. They do play Ariel, and this prompts me to shift away from the typical turn 4 Hyrem and instead play the Apple to banish Ariel. This should really hinder their game plan here. There's a good chance they plan to sing Whole New World on this next turn, and I don't want that just yet. I'd rather play out the Hyrem and follow up with Hades or something before they reset my hand. It seems I was right because they weren't able to play anything on that turn, so I do get the Hyrem off, and now I just want to ramp and empty my hand quickly because I do expect that Whole New World to come out. They play out Lantern and ink some stuff, but I'm finally at 7 ink myself, so I'm able to drop Hades and fully clear their board, so I'm feeling pretty good about how things are going at this point. They do hard play Cinderella Stouthearted, which is fine by me. I have another Hades, and so you can see now how I can take over this matchup pretty easily if I can trip up their plan while continuing to ramp up as normal. The goal really is to force them to hard cast their Whole New World, which is exactly what happens here, and it's fine with me. I get a hand full of tasty new cards. Against Steel Song, they really can't clear out my characters here. All 3 have 6 willpower, which is just too much for them, even with a back-to-back grab your swords. Against these types of characters, they really rely on going wide and casting Strength of a Raging Fire to deal with characters like this. So as long as I can keep them from spiraling into these combos, I should be good. If you look at my hand now, I have so many good tools to deal with pretty much anything they throw out. Their best bet would be to find their Sleepy's Flute and spam out some songs. They can combo into more and more several times, but based on my board and hand, this one's pretty much over. Even if they play out Rockstar or Cinderella, I'll be able to take them out one by one and finish out the game. Now I do expect them to maybe play out another Whole New World, especially since they only have 2 cards in hand, so I decide to not draw any more with my Hiram from this point onward. But it's too late regardless. I have so much pressure on board and they can't answer it, so they surrender and I'm on to the next game. In this game, I don't get a great opening hand, so I throw back everything other than my 1 and 2, and I still don't get the item combos I'm always looking for, but that's okay. I can definitely ink one of the grandmas here and cast Develop Your Brain, and I do find my Pawpsicle here actually. It looks like I'm up against yet another Amber deck, this time Amber Amethyst, so I'm expecting some very aggressive questing and bouncing coming my way. I throw out the Grammatala, again wishing I had Teeth and Ambitions. Honestly, after this session, I might consider bumping them up from 3 to 4 copies. I do play out Noi, but even with the Noi plus Grammatala, I can't take out the Simba, which is really unfortunate. They quest with Arthur and throw back the Simba, which is honestly okay with me, but they use him as ink to shift out the Rockstar Stitch, and so now I'm really wishing I had found one of my Mauis. I can do my Hiram combo here at least, and I do find a Teeth and Ambitions, which is nice, but not quite what I need here. I considered challenging into Arthur there for 1 damage, so I can follow up later with Teeth and Ambitions, but I decided to quest instead. Without being able to take out anything on that turn though, it pretty much seals my fate. Now they're at 16 lore. But if you remember a few games ago, I did come back from a 19 lore deficit. However, unlike that game, I didn't find the Fishbone Quill that could have ramped me up to 7 ink by this point to slam down the Be Prepared. But I'll try my best here, taking out Arthur by challenging and singing, and then forcing them to choose whether they want to banish the second Arthur or the Stitch with the Lady Tremaine. I'm pretty sure they're going to pick Arthur though, as I know they have that Rockstar Stitch in their hand ready to shift in. They do indeed shift him in, going to 19 lore, and of course I take him out promptly with Lady Tremaine. Now I'm expecting their Merlin Goat to come out for the win, but just in case, I draw cards and make sure I ink twice so I can play out Dragon next turn. But instead of the Goat, they actually hit me with a Spell Book. I tell you, I was not expecting that from this hyper aggro deck, and although I could have potentially stalled out several turns like in that previous game against Amber Ruby, this Amethyst aggro deck can win pretty easily when they get this high just by playing out a few Merlin Goats or apparently Spellbook. So I'm glad I got to show this matchup. It's an important one to know as one of Pawpsicle Control's biggest weaknesses, and in a best of 1 like this on the ladder, you always have to be ready for it. In this next game, I have a pretty good hand here with Pawpsicle and Ramp. I just need the Hiram, which I do find from the mulligan. This guy is playing a steel deck of some sort. I'm not too afraid of the Captain Hook though, so I just hard cast the 1 jump ahead and set up that juicy turn 3 Hiram. At this point, I don't think I've seen their second color, but I'm thinking this might be a green steel mill deck or something. But even if that's the case, I'm feeling pretty good with my hand and how these first few turns have played out. I do want to take out one or both of their shift targets if I can though, especially that Cinderella. After drawing cards, I do find Teeth and Ambitions, so I go ahead and use it to take out Cinderella. After that, I ink and play out Grandma Tala. In retrospect, I definitely should have done this in the opposite order and used Teeth and Ambitions on her instead of Hiram. Now they're able to 2-for-1 into Hiram if they wanted to, or even shift in Tink to take him out pretty easily. But here they reveal their second color by inking Yzma, and then they bounce in the Fox to take out Hiram. I haven't played many matches against Amethyst Steel with this deck, so it's kind of fun to try out this matchup. The great news here is that I'm already at 8 ink. Compare that to their 4 ink, and it reveals the game isn't quite as even as it seems. They decide to play out Depressed Beast, and I go ahead and take him out with the Dragon since I'm already at 9 ink. I can definitely hold Hiram here instead of questing until I find an item for him to draw off of. This particular ink combo will have a hard time removing him without challenging. They'd have to hit him with an Yzma, which is unlikely, or commit a lot of steel cards, so he's pretty safe. I do find the Nick Wild and therefore the Pawpsicle for Hiram, which is great, drawing me up more cards. I decide their little purple bounce package should go bye-bye now though, so I go ahead and aggressively wipe the board. Even though it took down some strong characters from my side, I think it's well worth it at this point in the game. It really sets them behind. If your opponent is relatively low in ink or low in cards in their hand, Be Prepared is fantastic if you have Lady Tremaine in your hand. If you suspect they'll only follow up with a single character, it's such an impressive 1-2 punch. Now that I've established and fully taken control, I can start marching out the Gastons to finish out the game. They can slowly take out my board with swords and other steel songs, or possibly that Floodborn Yzma, but as long as I keep up the quest pressure, I should be able to finish this one out pretty quick. They do play out Spellbook, but without something more, I should be able to win the race. I even hold my dragon until they play a character, so I can take them out and continue questing. And after another final back and forth, I'm able to take the win. And that's our last game of the day. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. I don't know about you, but I really like this format of showing off games. It seems like it might be a good way to quickly show off the playstyle and decisions for a deck. So let me know what you think about that. Also make sure to enter the giveaway. All the info's up at the beginning of the video. I'll choose a winner in about a week for all these goodies. And I do have more videos coming soon, so stay tuned for that. Until then, peace.